cloud. All right, we're now recording.
Sounds good.
So,
all right, so
welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. We have Hakham Melech ben Yaakov, and I'm Yaakov ben Yisrael, both of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and this week we're covering Parashath Nitzavim.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Well, you were talking about your experience visiting this rabbi in a different city.
Yeah, last Shabbat I was visiting a rabbinical family, and it was pretty cool to go hang out with rabbinical Jews from time to time, just so you can observe how they do things versus the way we would do things. And
so you can learn what not to do.
Yeah, we were discussing earlier before I started recording about the different blessings and rituals, and they have their fire rituals, they have their wine rituals and bread rituals, and I don't know where any of that comes from, really, because it's not in the Tanakh. You don't find that anywhere. In fact, you don't find that I know of any instance where anybody blessed wine, bread, or anything else.
It's an addition to the Tanakh that has significantly changed the religion into something it never was before. So, as I always like to say, for years now, Rabbinical Judaism is really the first Reform Judaism ever.
Yeah, they actually changed a lot.
Reform Judaism.
So I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, and also the Shabbat services, of course, here they're pretty much closed down because of COVID.
And oh god, you want to pull your hair out of your head by the time you're through with that. Oh my god! And then on top of it, there's crappy food. Now you wasted 4 hours of your morning for tuna fish salad and stale challah. Ah, what a nightmare.
Well, a cool thing about Orthodox Jews is they have the Shabbat goy, so they're cooking. Yeah. They're cooking while everyone's in the synagogue. They're cooking the chickens and whatever else.
Ahmed, bring the kugel. Ahmed, faster. Ahmed.
Ahmed. Which is actually illegal. You're not allowed to do it.
So why? Why would you say it's illegal? I'm gonna disagree with you on that one.
Okay. You have two types of service. And that is actually argumentative, but you have the avodah is of two types. You can have avodah which is paid for, and in that case you're called the sachir.
Right.
And then you have the avodah which is really kind of not paid for, and I say kind of not because the slave really belongs to the house of the owner of the slave, and the owner of the slave is responsible for feeding the servants, which is why a slave is allowed to eat from the sacred things of the Kohanim, because he's under that house and he doesn't have his own table. So that's why he's allowed to eat the food of the sacred food of the Mishkan.
Right.
Other people aren't. The Sachir isn't. So that lets you know there's a difference. Now, when we're told that when a Hebrew becomes poor, it says he will not serve with you like a foreign slave, but he will serve with you as a Sachir. Right. So it lets you know that there's two types of services. One that's paid for, which is above being a slave, and then there's one that's where you're actually a slave.
All right.
And so now, keeping that in mind, when we look at the commandment for Shabbat, both the Eved and the Amma are there, but it doesn't really define for us what Eved or Amma, because even the wife is considered an Amma, which is a female servant, and that's why the wife is never mentioned in the laws of Shabbat. So if you want to be really technical, you can say, well, the wife is excluded. She can work on Shabbat because it doesn't say that the wife has to.
Yes, but the wife is not a. But the wife is not a maidservant.
The wife is in places called an amma, and which is why the wife always refers to her husband as either Adoni or Baali.
Yes, but
both,
it's not. I mean, everything has. Yes, but everything has to be taken in context. And if the wife is called Amma, then I think that's probably just being poetic or being, or has a very specific contextual reason. A wife is not the same as an Amma at all. I mean, it's the wife. A wife is a much higher status, right, than a shifcha or an Amma or anything along those lines. So, all right, whatever. I don't want to. I see where you're going with this. I must say that I disagree, because I think that the only ones who must be restricted from working on Shabbat, who are not, who you must not force to work on Shabbat, you must not allow to work on Shabbat, are those who are permanent part of the household, and that does not apply to Ahmed from Kfar whatever, Kfar Kama, who's being paid 6 shekels an hour or whatever. So I mean, I have to honestly say, something rubs me wrong about hiring all these people and running like a whole little restaurant on Shabbat. But technically speaking, from the Torah, I can't really see.
No, there's not actually anything that prohibits that. And that's why I said there's 2 parts to the idea of avodah.
Right.
You can actually argue saying that a sahir is technically a servant. You pay him. Right. Doesn't matter whether you actually own him. You own him you pay him for the service.
Right.
And by paying him, that makes him your servant. He's serving you for pay as opposed to being owned.
Right.
And even the ownership of the slave, is technically a payment of sorts, because you have to provide the servant, with his food.
Yeah, it's a payment of sorts, but it's not a payment. You don't pay him a salary. Well, a schar is a salary, right? It's clearly what it is.
Well, it does. Yeah, but it's never said that it has to be money. It could be food as well. You can pay him in any way.
No. The sahir you are not responsible for his food and all of this kind of stuff, but you pay him a salary, and then he goes buys his own food with the salary. That's what a sahir is. Yes, that's what schar is. That word is used many times. So I disagree. I think that we're talking about here people who are part of the household. Everyone in a man's household must be required to rest on the Shabbat, and we're talking about people only permanent part of the household. So the sons, the daughters, they're permanent parts of the household. The servants, the Eved and the Amma, they're permanent parts of the household. They're the male slaves and the female slaves.
That's actually identified in when we have the Brit Milah,
right?
Because it talks about the house of Avram. And it says specifically your son, all the males of your sons that are born in your house, whether they are purchased with money or not.
Right. Correct. So that's what it's talking about. I think it's quite clear with the Shabbat. It's talking about people who are a permanent member of your household. In other words, they live in your, if you have a big compound, like a big hacienda or something like that, they live within the walls of your hacienda, and they eat at your table, and you provide them. You provide them with their sustenance and their protection and all this kind of stuff. So Ahmed from Ramallah, or Ahmed from from Khan Yunis or whatever the hell, he's a sahir. That's a sahir, and technically a sahir is he's not under your wing of protection. He's not part of your household, and therefore he is not required to. You are not required to give him a day off on Shabbat. In my opinion, he can take the day off, I guess, but you're not required to you're not required to. That's my opinion.
And so you wouldn't include a ger as a sahir?
A ger is a completely different situation. A ger is someone who's
A ger
already
is just
part
a
of the
resident.
covenant.
Yeah,
No,
a ger is just a
someone
resident. And if he resides with you, either he's a member of your house and you give him a stipend or whatever you want to call it from your own personal property, or he could he could work on your land and be paid as well.
But a ger is a permanent is someone who has
He's a permanent resident. That's right.
More than a permanent resident. He's part of the covenant. He's entered into the covenant of the Torah. So he's protected under the fact that because he's entered into the covenant. He has the right and the obligation to rest on the Shabbat, even if
that's right.
He may work
whether he's paid or not. Yeah. Well, the point is he paid? If he's paid for his service, then he's considered sahir. Period. Because
but he may be a sahir, but he's also a ger, and so the ger being a ger already exempts him, whether he's your sahir or not, right? That would be like saying, oh, if I take if I hire you, on Shabbat, now you're suddenly allowed to work on Shabbat because you're a sahir. I won't say that. I say if you hire me, so now
that's what I'm getting at. Is
now if you hire me to bring clean the table and bring the food to your Shabbat table, and you pay me 10 whatever Deutschmarks or whatever the hell they use there, I guess it's euro now, then an hour, then then does that, now I'm your sahir, so now I'm allowed to work on Shabbat? No, that doesn't make sense. I'm exempt because I'm an Israelite. I'm part of the covenant. A ger is an Israelite. He's exempt because he's part of the covenant. It doesn't matter who he works for during the week, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way I see it. Anywho. So it's people who are a permanent part of your household. If they are in your household, just like you gave the example with Abraham, where he has to circumcise all the males in his household, whether they were born in his household or whether they were purchased. So that right there shows exactly what we're getting at. These are permanent members of his household. It would be like if you go to, I don't know, any like clan, and they have like their own territory, and these people are permanently living within their little territory and are, anyway, that's the way I see it. So therefore, so Ahmed, who's being paid, 6 shekels an hour on Shabbat to scoop the vile chulent out of the disgusting pot and then slop it on your plate is technically not part of your household. He's a sahir. So even though it kind of rubs me the wrong way, I mean, it seems like there shouldn't be any work being done for you on Shabbat. I mean, if I'm going to go technically by the Torah, in my opinion, then Ahmed could work for you on Shabbat. That's what I think.
I would say it could be argued that way, but it could also be argued the other way. I'll leave it for the person to make his own decision.
Obviously.
Yeah. Me personally, I kind of I look at it similar to what you're saying,
right?
But I leave it open to, hey, if you want to argue that way, because like for me, I was questioned a couple of weeks ago about why we use electricity on Shabbat, right. And I said it doesn't really violate Shabbat. And they said, yeah, but you have to
the answer to that is simple. The answer is why not?
Well,
right?
the way I look at it is this. First, electricity is being harnessed, okay?
Right.
And it's being harnessed just like any other natural phenomenon. Sure. Any natural resource is harnessed. All we do is we prepare it for use, okay? So let's say you plant a field, all right?
Right.
Well, they begin to grow on Shabbat. So does that mean we're not allowed to eat fruit if they start to bud on Shabbat, or if they come up on Shabbat? You understand? Because you have these Shabbat, they're there whether we work on those days or not. The plants, resources are there, and they work on Shabbat. Now, even if someone gathered the food on Shabbat, brought it to me on the weekday, am I not allowed to buy the food just because it was harvested on Shabbat? He has nothing to do with the Shabbat keeping for me.
Right.
You know? And,
The rabbis might claim that
you
you're not supposed to buy such food, but yeah, okay. You're not supposed to get any hana'ah or any enjoyment from violation of the Shabbat. But yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, technically speaking.
Well, did he violate the Shabbat? He did. If he's not required to keep it, how does he violate the Shabbat?
Okay. I would even go so farther as to say, what if a Jew violated the Shabbat and picked apples or whatever on the Shabbat? Are you allowed to buy those apples? I mean, again, technically speaking, you're allowed to. You're not. If you buy them on Monday or Sunday, you're not violating the Shabbat. If he violated the Shabbat, that's his damn problem. You know, you could say, well, your actions are contributing to the violation. You know, you're supporting Shabbat violators by buying their products.
No. Look, in the same thing, I make another point too. Like at our homes, not everyone that you meet is going to be rich enough to buy a home and own it.
Right.
So most people have mortgages, and you pay those mortgages each month. Unless you own your home, you're paying for it, right? It's just like a rent. A mortgage is basically the same as a rent, because if you stop paying your mortgage, it's like stop paying your rent, you get ousted. So you're paying for the use of the home for Shabbat as well. So does that mean that because I don't want to pay for those days, I have to move out of my home on Shabbat?
Listen, you can go. First of all, you can go even further than that. I mean, the way I always used to respond to the rabbis is I would say to them, okay, well, if you're worried about because they have two arguments. Okay, so first of all, the reason they restrict electricity, I think basically what happened is when electricity became popular, the rabbis said, this is really kind of like fire. We better restrict it. And then no, really, this is what happened. I'm pretty sure this is what must have happened. And then whoever, the scientists who knew about it, came along and said, well, it's not really the same as fire. There's no rapid oxidation. There's nothing mixing rapidly with oxygen. There's no flames. There's nothing like that. So it's not really fire. And then the rabbi says, all right, we better go back to the drawing board. We've got to figure out a way to restrict this stuff, because it seems like fire, but we can't do it under Exodus 35:3, lo tivaru esh, because it's the scientists are telling us it's not really fire. What can we do? Oh, I got an idea. We'll do it the building. If you complete a switch, then it's like, I think it's completion of, I can't remember, one of their ridiculous 39 melachot, where you can't comb your hair because it's plowing or something like that.
Oh my God.
No, I'm really. I might be getting that wrong, but it's so ridiculous and so stupid. It makes you want to stick your finger down your throat and just chuck up your disgusting cholent that Ahmed slopped into your pot or whatever. But at any rate, into your plate. But basically, what they say is the completion of a circuit is a violation of one of the 39 melachot of, I think, completing something that you started or something like that. And so that's how they were able to get it underneath their rubric of the Lamatet melachot. Okay, so that's one thing. But then the other thing they say is, as you said, in Israel especially, since the electric company is staffed mostly by Jews, that if you use electricity on Shabbat, I heard this again and again and again, and I'm sure a user, I think, who doesn't want to be identified for some strange reason, but I'm sure a user heard this a million times, that you're causing Jews to work if you use electricity on Shabbat, because the Jews are staffing the electric company. If you overload the circuits or whatever they have to do, there are Jews there. And my response would be, well, if that's the case, you really shouldn't be using water or flushing the toilet or doing anything either.
None of those things.
You flush a toilet, you might be using Jewish labor. You don't know it,
That's right. And you shouldn't even be in your apartment unless you own your apartment. Right. That means for all those people who are paying mortgages or renting, they have to live on the street during Shabbat because they're basically paying for a service on Shabbat. And I disagree with that. That's being overly exaggerated, and that's not what the purpose of Shabbat for us was anyway.
And not only the answer to the second part, we can get back to completing the circuit and all their their legalistic jumping jacks that they did to squeeze fire under completing the completing completion of building or something like that. But The answer to the first one is simple, all right? No one in Israel on Shabbat, not even the most orthodox rabbi would suggest that the army shouldn't be on alert, and the police shouldn't be on alert, and the doctors shouldn't be on what they call matkonet Shabbat, on Shabbat staffing schedule. There are certain essential workers that you need as a minimum to keep a society flowing in a normal and natural way, right? Just like there's a certain amount, and I've had this discussion with a zillion people over the years, this idea of not doing melacha on Shabbat, it's impossible. You must do melacha on Shabbat. Everyone does melacha on Shabbat, okay? You wash your hands before eating a meal or after going to bed, that's melacha, okay? You open the door to your, that's melacha, okay? You take the plates from the cabinet to the table, that's melacha. You take the bread out of the
definition of melacha.
What?
I disagree with the definition of melacha as being any type of movement over or distance and force and all that stuff that we define as work.
No, I do too. Melacha is things that my definition is that, as I've said for years now, that melacha is something that you need to do that you don't want to do. Okay, but there are plenty of things on Shabbat that you need to do that you don't want to do. Okay, I have to go to the bathroom. Okay, maybe I don't want to spend the next half an hour in the bathroom or whatever, but I have to. I have to. I don't know. I have to walk to shul or whatever. Maybe it's 108 degrees outside, and I'm wearing a stupid shtreimel and a coat that goes down to my knees. But I have to get to shul one way or another. So I'm gonna, I'm not me. But the point is that what it means is you're on matkonet Shabbat, to use the phrase I used before. There's a certain minimum amount of work you must do on Shabbat. But the idea of not doing melacha is you keep that the stuff you need to do that you do on Shabbat to the absolute minimum needed. Okay, I've got to clear the table after lunch, or I won't be able to have a clear table for dinner unless I'm going to have 2 living rooms in my house or something like that, right? And it's the same thing here, okay? It's the same thing with the police. There has to be at least some police on guard in Israel. The army has to be on guard. There have to be some doctors in the hospital. There has to be a pharmacy that's open for emergencies, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, we actually have precedents for that in the Tanakh about the military and stuff.
Right, you're talking about in Maccabees.
Well, it's even. I'm talking about in Tanakh.
In Tanakh itself. Okay.
Technically part of Tanakh.
Right.
But we have examples in the Maccabees as well. But in the Tanakh, I can't remember what king it was, or off the top of my head. But it talks about the guards performing guard duty on Shabbat. The changing of the guard on the Shabbat. And also, there's one interesting one. I can't remember who it was, but it was a queen at one time who was queen over Israel, and her son was hidden by the Levites.
Oh, sure, yeah. That was.
I can't remember who that was.
That's oh, geez, that was what's her name?
Was that Josiah's mother?
Who?
What's that?
Was that Josiah's mother?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I think it might have been.
I think it was Atalia.
Yeah.
Atalia, I think was her name. And, yeah.
But the point is that he was kept in the temple compound, and the Levites were used as the guards.
Right.
And one cool thing about the Levites in general,
right,
is that along with the Kohanim, they're actually exempted from the commandment to keep Shabbat. They're the only group amongst the Israelites who are allowed to work on Shabbat.
Why do you say that?
Because their service is called Melcha as well as Avodah. And they perform that on Shabbat every Shabbat. It says specifically they perform their Melcha on Shabbat.
But that exactly goes back to what I was saying before, which is that this idea of doing zero Melacha on Shabbat is a ridiculous idea. It's impossible. So it's not that they're allowed to do Melacha on Shabbat. It's that what they're required to do on Shabbat is considered necessary, is part of this necessary work that must be done on Shabbat. Just like in a given household, it's considered necessary work to set the table before the meal and put the dishes in the sink after the meal. That's just considered necessary work. The same way that some police officers are on guard on Shabbat, some way that doctors are in the hospital on Shabbat, et cetera, because it's impossible.
That's right. And
completely 100% shut down the society.
the Levites are a member of the armed forces of Israel. And the point I was getting at was it was the Levites who were over the guarding of the king, as well as the guard that guard that changed. So to get around that, because we know the Levites were spread throughout Israel, they had their own cities. Now, of course, we're told that they didn't have any inheritance, but that's not technically true because the Levites owned the cities of refuge. There were 48 of them throughout the land.
Yeah, but it's a very small amount, and that's what they mean by it.
Well, it's a small amount, but they're all spread out. They're spread out through the land, and they were technically exempt from the requirement not to work on the Shabbat. So, as being part of a branch of the service, the military or the armies of Israel, then for Shabbat, they being the ministers of God, they're also our ministers, and they were a part of the group of Shofatim and Shotarim, then they could actually do that as a part of their official services too. So there's ways to get around it.
Well, I guess what I'm, if I could just interrupt for 1 second. Yep, go ahead, Yaakov, and I'll respond.
But even so, me personally, I don't think that Melech is what a lot of people thinks that Melech is.
All right.
And by definition, it's a service. It's a service either you're forced to do or paid to do. And how do we prove that? Because the law says, Sheshit Yamim, Ta'avod Wasita Melech. So it says 6 days you shall serve and do whatever the Melech is.
No, Tavod just means work.
We can say it means work today, but it specifically means you serve.
So by that definition, you're saying you can paint your house on Shabbat because you're not receiving a salary for it, or you're not being forced to do it?
I say that you could do anything you really want to do that you're not being forced to do, or you're not being paid to do.
I don't want to use the word ridiculous, but sometimes
call it whatever you want.
Sometimes we Karaites have to strongly disagree with each other. I strongly disagree with that assessment. Okay, but go ahead.
But the point is, the service of the Kohanim is specifically called Avoda and Melacha. And so a part of their service and Melacha that they do is changing the bread on Shabbat or performing the sacrificial duties. Okay. And so that's not you can't say that that's something you don't want to do and qualify that as Melacha. That's actually something they have to do. They're required to do it. They don't have any choice. They can't say, well, I'm not going to do it today. They're required to do that.
All right. I disagree with your overall take on the whole thing. I think that...
That's your choice.
Yeah, damn right. I think that I see it differently. I see that, okay.
Well, I'll tell you what. You find any reference to Melacha anywhere in the Tanakh where it's not under the context of someone being doing it as a service or being paid to do it. I've already done the work. I've already went through it from cover to cover. So I give you that challenge. You find anywhere where Melacha anywhere in the Tanakh is used outside of the context of a slave doing it, someone who's doing it because they have no other choice but to do it, or they're being paid to do so.
The Melacha of the temple. That's not, no one was being forced to do it.
No. The Kohanim are required to do that.
Well, I mean, define the word required.
That's the command. That's the command in the Torah that the Kohanim do that. They don't have a choice to say, well, we don't think we're going to do that today. They have to do it.
I'd have to go through all the references, but from my understanding, when I studied it, and I studied it also quite extensively, the idea of Melacha is it's something that must be done. I agree with you, it's something that must be done, but it's not necessarily something that someone else is commanding you to do. It's something that has to be done, and therefore it's work. That's what we call work in everyday language, because work has to be done. I may not want to go to work, but I have to go to work, unless I'm planning to rob a bank, which sounds like a pretty good idea, actually. Anyone want to drive the getaway car, by the way?
That's what I'm getting at. It's something you do that's either you're required to do it because you're a slave and have no choice, or you're actually paid to do that service.
So by your definition, let's use logic here. By your definition, I could spend the entire Shabbat painting my house, cleaning my floor, retarring the roof, and retiling the floor, retiling the bathroom floor, because nobody's forcing me to do it and nobody's paying me to do it.
I say there's no problem.
No problem, really, Yaakov? Okay, all right.
No problem at all.
All right, reductio ad absurdum, I claim, and that's it. I mean, it doesn't, that defies logic. I can't imagine that.
Defies your logic.
Shabbat, it does. It defies common sense, and everything has to be enshrined in the Torah by some kind of common sense. Okay, so you all right? Listen, I'm not going to ask you if you do it, because that would be like trying to bait you or something. But I can't. That right there is to me is ridiculous. I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous.
Well,
there's no way.
If you can find those references in Tanakh, like I asked, then I'll agree with you that my opinion is ridiculous. But until you do it, then I stand by it.
Okay, but I think that just again, I think it's we can't
see. One thing I do that I don't care what anyone else does. I allow the Tanakh to define the terminology for me. I don't invent my own terminology based upon something I pull out my ass. I let the
So
Tanakh,
you're saying that, okay, I got you. But you're saying all the references in the Tanakh of the word melacha are either someone's being forced to do it or someone's being paid to do it.
There's only one reference, and that's at the very beginning in reference to God himself. And that is actually a point that I explained of how you can say that was melacha for Elohim. But outside of that, you don't have not one single reference where melacha is referred to as melacha outside of the context of being a slave or being paid to do it.
The melacha regarding the building of the wall by Nehemiah, that's regarded to melacha, and it's you could say, okay, it's referring to the people he paid to do it, but it's not. It's if I remember the phrase correctly, it's just referring to the project itself. That's an example that comes to mind, and that is clearly called melacha.
The melacha was done by people who were installed there by a governor to build as a building project, and it was actually funded by the king of Persia. They actually had funds for it. So even though it doesn't specifically mention that anybody was paid for it, they didn't work for free.
Yes, but when it speaks about the melacha of the wall being done, being done, it's not talking about
decree. That was a decree from the king of Persia to his subjects to have it done, and they were given money to have the project.
Yes, but that's not the main point there. The point is that when it's referred to as melacha, it's not talking about the fact that it happens to be that some of the workers were paid. Probably Nehemiah was not paid, but it's talking about the project.
Nehemiah was the cupbearer of the king. I'm pretty sure he was paid.
Not necessarily to build the wall. He may have been paid as in his position as governor. Anyway, listen, we can go on for hours and hours and hours. Mm-hmm. I think that I have to strongly disagree, and I just want to sum up by saying why this is so important. Okay, because in terms of talking about what we were talking about before, and that is that as also I've been saying for years, that after every commandment in the Torah, there has to be there is an unwritten sentence which should be understood, which should be muvan me'alav, understood, even though it may not be explicitly there, and that is if it makes sense, or it has to adhere to common sense. Okay, don't hit your mother and your father. Okay, well, if by mistake my arm flies and smacks my mom in the God forbid, in the nose or something like that, and it was a complete accident, well, then you have to take that into account. There has to be some common sense here, and I think I'm sorry to say, but I think that the definition that you're presenting leads to some very nonsensical conclusions, and so I would like to just sum up by presenting my take on the whole thing, which is that Melacha does in fact mean work, things that we have to do that we don't want to do. Okay, I have to go to work Monday through Friday. I have to, I have to clean the floor sometimes. I have to, water the garden. Actually, I love watering the garden. I love doing that on Shabbat, actually. So that's one of my favorite tasks on Shabbat. I have to, I have to bring I don't know, whatever. Okay, these are things that there are a lot of things that need to be done. Okay, and that's milacha. It's not that I want to do it; it's that I need to do it. That's milacha, and that's what we're supposed to be doing for 6 days. And anything that falls into that category on the Shabbat or on the Chagim is not supposed to be done. However, don't do milacha, followed by the unwritten clause, but there has to be, but use your common sense. There must be some things, there must be some matkonet Shabbat, some minimum amount of tasks that must be done on Shabbat in order to live a functioning life, okay? As I gave the example, the table has to be cleared after the Shabbat, after the Shabbat meal. The toilet has to be flushed after you go to the bathroom. Maybe the beds have to be made, or at least partially made, so the room doesn't, look, so the house doesn't look like a slop hole. The books have to be put back on the shelf after they're read. These are all forms of milacha, but they're just minimum things that need to be done. Okay, if I go and start retiling the bathroom on Shabbat, that does not need to be done on Shabbat. Okay, there's nothing. It could be done on Friday. It could be done on Sunday. It could be done on Tuesday. It doesn't need to be done on Shabbat. So when we're talking about don't do milacha on Shabbat, it means don't do milacha on Shabbat. But use your, unless there's something that common sense dictates that you must do on Shabbat because you have no choice. And I think that's really the underlying idea there. So therefore, there is no violation of the Shabbat when people do the milachot on Shabbat that they must do, because there are some things that must be done. Just as now, unwinding and getting back to what we were originally saying about electricity, just like this argument by the rabbinites saying, oh, we can't use electricity because it may cause a Jew, in the Cholon, electric processing plant to flip a switch or something on Shabbat to work, then that's a ridiculous statement, because if we want electricity, which is not more than a modern convenience, it really is, part of society these days, then there has to be some small amount of work that must be done on Shabbat to keep the electric plant going, to keep the electricity flowing, just as there must be some small amount of work that must be done on Shabbat to keep the water flowing, just as there must be some small amount of work that must be done on Shabbat to keep some police staff, to keep some doctors in the hospitals, to keep some nurses in the hospitals, to keep a couple of pharmacies open, and on and on and on. So that's really so there's no violation of the Shabbat as long as because the mitzvah really says don't do work unless you have to, unless you absolutely must on the Shabbat, and therefore all of the stuff mentioned falls into the category of really must, and therefore it's not a violation of Shabbat. Anyway, that's the way I see it.
I read an article in a J Post several years ago. There's this small settlement up in the Shamron.
Yes.
And they turn their main powers off before Shabbat. But what they do, they have a generator. And
right.
They start it up before Shabbat.
Right.
And they have enough fuel to let it run all the way through Shabbat.
Right.
So they're not making the workers at the electric plant work.
Right. And that's fine and dandy. I think that's a nice solution if you could do it, but I don't know if every settlement could afford a huge generator to power all their homes and stuff like that. So, I would claim that in this day and age, electricity is a necessity, and therefore, if it means that a couple of Jews have to be rotated through each Shabbat to work, matkonet Shabbat, to work the Saturday shift, then so be it. Just as a couple of policemen each Saturday have to work to make sure that that crime doesn't get out of hand on Shabbat. But I hear what you're saying, and that's a nice solution. If people can use innovation to find a solution that doesn't involve any work at all, then that's great. But what would happen if now the generator's running and all of a sudden there was a leak or something like that? Then suddenly they'd have to do it, right? They're not going to wait till Sunday to fix the leak. So it may reduce, but it doesn't necessarily eliminate. It doesn't necessarily eliminate work on Shabbat, right? If there's an emergency, or what if the electricity goes off? But let's say it's I don't know, Shabbat evening service, and all of a sudden the generator goes down or something like that. Then what? I don't know.
Then what do they do? They just stay in the dark for the rest of Shabbat.
Right. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. I guess that's their decision.
One thing we can agree on, I think. I'm sure Melech will disagree. He always disagrees. That's just, in fact, that's his instinctual response is to disagree with me.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I
Come
disagree
on.
with that. I'm sorry.
We can go back through all the videos.
I disagree with that. Yeah, I disagree with that statement.
See?
Yeah,
Now, when we talk about, defining certain things, we have to use the intellect God gave us. That's one of the praises that the Tanakh uses for a human being is the intellect, the wisdom that God grants a person.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to use that intellect. When
Sure.
we look at certain things, like it says, for instance, you can't carry a burden on Shabbat. Okay, what does it mean you can't carry? What's a burden? First thing you have to do is define a burden. And if you want to go by strict definitions, even prophecy, you're not allowed to prophesy on Shabbat because prophecy is also called a Masah. It's called a burden. So being strict with definitions is really not logical. If you want to say that Melacha as a strict definition, then even angels perform work, and they're not allowed to do anything on Shabbat because they're called malach. And that's where you get the word melacha from la'ach. Haggai, the prophet, for instance, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, it says, Yomer Haggai malach Adonai. So Haggai, the malach of Adonai, now we know he was a prophet, he's also termed malach Adonai. B'malachut Adonai la'am lemor. Ani itchem ne'um Adonai. So the message that he had was called malachut. So his actual service, which is a synonym for malacha, what he's doing is he's delivering a message. So we can't always go. The point of getting it is we can't always say we have to use strict definitions because that would also be illogical. And so, when we look at certain things in the Torah, there's ways that the Israelites did it. And it's, for me, interesting how they did it. Like I said, they utilized the Levites in lots of things. Which is why they were considered Netzanim. They were given to the priesthood to do their menial task. That's what it says in the Torah. Which is why the Levites have to clean the Mishkan. They have to repair it. They have to put it together, take it down, and carry it. Because they were given to the Kohanim, which is specifically the family of Aaron, to do the tasks and the work and the service of whatever's needed. I think it was Eliezer, if I remember right. It might have been another one, but I think it was Eliezer who was over the Netzanim, and it was his job to assign the task to each of the family of the Levites, of what they had to do for their services. And a part of that had to do with being what's called the temple servants. They were on guard duty. Whatever had to be done, the Kohen said, okay, this is what you got to do today. So, logically speaking, there's certain things that has to be done. And we see that in the Tanakh. You can't tell the army, okay, everybody go home and come back Sunday and we'll stand back up on the border. Just doesn't work that way.
Let's go to the other side. The command is you should work 6 days and rest the 7th. But if you don't work on Thursday, you're breaking the command. Well,
it's not a command to work.
It says
it's a command not to work.
It's on the 6 days, it says you shall do your work on 6 days.
Yeah, this idea of shall is English. That's not in the Hebrew.
What's in the Hebrew?
It's ta'avod. That's just an imperfect form. That is not that's not an imperative in any way, shape, or form. That's an imperfect. And all it's saying is that you may, if you wish, to work these 6 days. However, the command actually is on the 7th day you must rest. That's a Shabbat, and you're not allowed to work.
I mean, the 6th
I
day,
think
7th day. Okay.
I think if I can chime in here for a second, I think Yaakov is giving a grammatical explanation for what I think would be just I'll give a common sense explanation to get back to that, okay? Which is that it really what the Torah is saying is if you want to work or if you must work, do it on the 6 days. Okay, and what Yaakov is pointing out grammatically, and I agree with him on this, is that the future tense, it uses the future tense there, okay? Like it's Tavod, I remember it's Tavod, always in the second person, or often it expresses a commandment, it doesn't, or an invitation to, or something like that. And so to say that it's saying that you must work on those 6 days, and I heard this all the time when I was in Shabbat. In fact, I even knew rabbinical Jews who, if they didn't have anything to do on a particular day, would force themselves to do some kind of milacha to fulfill that commandment. It's almost like what they do with shiluch haken, but it's another story. At any rate, the idea is that it's what the Torah is really saying there. If you need to work, do it on those 6 days. Not that you must work on those 6 days.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the point I'm getting at. You know, these words shall and let. For instance, in Genesis it says in English, "Let there be light." This word "let" is an English term, and it actually indicates the seeking of permission. Okay, as if God's asking permission that light come into existence, and that's not actually the case. When it says Yehi or, Yehi is what's called the jussive, and all it does is imply a desire, a wish, or a command that something happen. Now, what we call the imperative, that's always in the second person. The cohortative is in the first person. For instance, when God says let us, or they always say it in English, let us go down. All right, this negative has to do with the, or even in the beginning where it says Na'aseh Adam. They always say, let us make man in our image. Well, all it's doing is implying a desire on the part of God to have something done. So that's what's called the cohortative. That's in the first person, whether it's singular or plural, doesn't make any difference. And so basically what he's saying is, I would like to, or I have a desire, I have a wish to make a man. Okay, and the same thing in what's called the jussive, when it says Yehi or, is basically saying light, there should be light. It's a desire that light should come into existence. It's not that God is asking for permission for anybody. The second person is what we call imperative. And that's always, in fact, the imperative is built from the second person. For instance, if I tell you to write, it's chetov. And the reason why you say chetov is because you're removing the second person prefix, ti. So the imperfect is actually tik tov, okay? But because you remove that second person form, that's how you make it the imperative. It's from the second person. So now you have chetov. And so the idea of the imperative as being a command is that it's the desire of one person that another person do that thing. And that's why we consider command always in the second person form. But here, this is just an imperfect. The only time you can even give the imperfects a form of command is when you negate it. Okay, for instance, when it says lo tirsach, you should not kill. Okay, because you have that lo before it, now it takes on the force of a command. And that's all I'm going to get. That's getting too technical.
Okay.
Sounds good. All right, should we get into this week's Parsha?
Sometime or another.
Sometime before next week, right?
Yeah. That's our introduction. It was an hour long.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So, yeah. All right. So this week's Parsha, Yaakov, if you want to start off, I'm just going to take a second to get my computer set up here. And
Yeah. So we're in Parashat Nitzavim, and this is in Devarim chapter 23. Oh, actually, it's 27. It's the 23rd Parashat. So it's Devarim chapter 28, excuse me, and we're going to start at verse 8. Atem nitzavim hayom kulbechem lifnei Adonai Elohechem v'rashechem shivtechem ziknechem v'shoterechem kol ish Yisrael. You are all standing today before Adonai your God, your chiefs, your tribes, your elders, your officers, every person of Israel. Now it says Kol Ish Yisrael, but here it just means a person.
so how would you explain the phrase Rashechem Shiftachem? Poetic? This really should be a Rashe Shiftachem, right?
Poetic isn't. We have what's called grammatical speech. Usually, grammatical speech, the default is masculine, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's always just only means males, because the overwhelming majority of the Torah is written in the second person masculine, but that we know includes women. Now there's certain parts of the Torah where it specifically is referring to the women, and it's written in the feminine form. But just because the rest of it is in the masculine, which is the default, that's just a grammatical form of default, because we have to understand there's only two genders in Semitic. There's either male or female. There's no neutral gender. In Greek, for instance, you have neutral gender, but in Semitic you don't. And so in narrative, the default is always masculine.
Yeah, but that wasn't exactly my question. So it doesn't say Rashe Shiftachem, it says Rashechem Shiftachem.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain that phraseology? It doesn't make any sense. Your heads of your...
Well, the Rosh is just the leaders of the people.
Yes, but it should be a Rashe.
It doesn't necessarily imply that only males can be your leaders, because we know that's not true.
I'm not talking about the male-female thing. I'm talking about the word Rashechem rather than the word Rashe, which it should be.
Okay, right? I'm missing your question somehow.
Well, it doesn't make sense. If I were to say the heads of your tribes, I would say Rashe Shiftachem.
No. These are two different words. Rashechem means your leaders. Shiftechem means your tribes. It's not saying the leaders of your tribes. It's just saying your leaders, your tribes, your elders, and your officers. It's not saying it doesn't say Rashe Shiftechem.
Right.
It says Rashechem, which means your leaders. It's just like it's saying. It doesn't say. It doesn't say Zikne Shiftehim. It doesn't say Shoter Shiftehim.
All right,
That's
one
not what it's
second. Just give me 1 second here. So again, just go to a kind of standard English translation, because from what I remember, they usually translate as the head of your tribe, the heads of your tribes, and that is, where are we again? Deuteronomy
In my
29.
opinion, an incorrect translation if they're putting that in the genitive.
It's Deuteronomy. I don't have it in front of me. What is it? 29
Yeah,
again?
it's 28:8 or
20.
28:9.
Okay, I'll go to the New International Version.
I
28.
think that's 29. They got these numbers all screwed up in this
I know.
here.
Amos chapter 29.
So I think it's 20. I think it's 29. 9.
Oh, Deuteronomy 29, right?
Yeah, because
Okay.
29:9.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second. 29:9. The leaders and your leaders and chief men, it translates here. The elders and officials. Okay, 1 second. All right, so here they do translate as two separate words. Let's go to this translation. This is New Living Translation, verse 9. All of you tribal leaders. Yeah, here they say tribal leaders, right?
Yeah, the Living Translation is a paraphrase. It's not technically a translation.
Right, but it's sure. But the paraphrase is to
Is
put
a
those two words
paraphrase.
together as this. Yeah, but that's more than a paraphrase. That's a translation according to the fact that the first word is modified, or the first word modifies the second word. Let's just, for the hell of it, do let's do the.
So
JPS.
if you're saying, if what you're saying is correct, you have Rashayim Shiftehim saying that the Rashay should be genitive, which I disagree with.
Right.
The heads of your tribes, then it would
Right.
also be the rest of them following in line, the heads of your tribes, of your elders, and of your officers. Which I'm not saying it couldn't have meant that. I'm just saying grammatically that's not how it's written. It just basically indicates your leaders, your tribes, your elders, your officers.
1 second here.
And if you look at it, you know, the Rosh would be over all of those, of the tribes, the elders, and the officers.
Possibly, but that's also okay. All right. It's just that it doesn't make sense. Okay, I'll tell you why. So here's verse 10. But at any rate, Rashechem, okay, so these are your heads. Ziknechem, these are your elders. Shotrechem, these are your officers.
Officers.
Okay, right. But Shiftechem, this is not, Shevet is not a person. A Shevet is a tribe.
Is the tribe, that's right.
So here, so it doesn't make sense, because everything here that's written is the leader, right? Rosh is a leader. Zaken is a leader. Shoter is a leader. Shevet is not a leader. So the way I'd always interpreted it, and I think as I'm looking out, at least the one translation agrees with that, is it really is trying to say Rashi Shiftechem, because we've seen also that phrase in other places as well, right? And then it's expressing it in poetic form, so it's saying Rashechem Shiftechem. It's poetic, so it's matching it's changing the Rashi Shiftechem into Rashechem Shiftechem as a poetic kind of because this is a poem, right? This Nitzavim is a poem.
No, this is narrative.
What's that?
This is narrative. Poetry and narrative are two different things. And I hear that a lot. People say, "Well, this is poetic," but this is actually a narrative. And this
but it's but Nitzavim is basically the introduction of Moses' poem, right? I mean, his narrative. It's his speech. So it's not straight. It's not straight narrative. It becomes very poetic.
It's narrative from the very first chapter, because you have to understand the context is that Moses is standing before the Israelites at the in the Arava on the other side of Jordan in Moab, and the Israelites are standing there. They're looking at at their land that they're supposed to go into, and he's explaining the Torah to them. So this is all done on the same day, in the same instance. So this context starts, as we've mentioned before, at the very first, where it says, on this side of Jordan, in the Arava, in the plains of Moab, or whatever, Moses began to explain this Torah saying, and that's where the narrative begins. And it goes all the way up to where it says, and this is the song that Moses says. And that's where the poetry
No, I understand that. It's not technically poet. It's not, okay. So maybe it's, but maybe I should be more specific and say it's maybe somewhere in between straight narrative and poetry. In other words, it's oratory. It's not like then the Israelites camped in the desert of Tzin and then moved to and then in such and such day they left it. It's not straight narrative, right? It's kind of oratory. So we would be more likely to expect some kind of poetic elements here, and I guess that's what I'm saying. In fact, I'm looking at another translation here for whatever it's worth. I mean, I have all these translations in front of me, the English Standard Version, and it translates it as, "You are standing today, all of you, before the Lord your God, the heads of your tribes." So it doesn't say your heads or tribes. So it's out of four. There are two translations that say the heads of your tribes, and two that say something along your heads and your heads and your tribes. So what I'm trying to say is, and we don't have to get bogged down on this.
That's their opinion of it. That's their opinion of how they understand it, and evidently that's the way you understand it. I understand it differently.
I think
I don't see where it has to be genitive at all.
Fair enough. Okay.
In fact, it's not written
genitive.
But
I would say it's poetic genitive, but all right, let's move on.
I've never heard of poetic genitive, but that's okay.
Well, I don't know if that's a standard category, but what I'm saying is that it's genitive, and then it's because it's poetry, it's changing the form to flow more poetically.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, we can move on.
Tapechem neshechem v'gerecha asher b'kerev mahanecha mehotei v'aitzecha aitzecha ad shoev meimecha. So your little ones, which is normally translated as your children, your women. And now this is interesting because it changes from the plural to the singular. So your little ones, your women, and your resident. This is gerecha. This is the singular, which is in the midst of your camp, singular. From the carrier of your wood to the drawer of your water. The sho'ev is the word they use when it talks about someone going to a well. They drop the ked, which is a bucket. They bring up the water. L'ovracha bevarit Adonai Elohecha uve'alatho asher Adonai Elohecha koret immecha hayom. To bring you into, or to transfer you, or however you want to look at that word, into the covenant of Adonai your God, and into his oath. Allah is an oath, or I think some people call it a curse, but I'm not sure if it's actually a curse. I think it's more of an oath, and you're cursed if you don't do it.
Right.
Which the Lord, which Adonai your God is cutting with you today. And that's the end of the first aliyah. And the second begins, Lima'an Hakim Othecha Hayom Lo La'am Wahu Yihyecha Leilohim Ka'asher Deber Lach וכאשר נשבע לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק, וליעקב. In order to establish you today as a people for him, and he shall be for you a God. as he spoke to you and as he promised to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. ולא אתכם לבדכם אנוכי כורש את הברית הזאת ואת האלה הזאת. And it is not only with you that I am cutting this covenant and this oath. And here we have again the same thing that we're talking about with the Rosh Hashem Shiftechem. We have Ittechem, Levadechem, with you, only you. Ki es asher yishno po imanu omeid hayom lifnei Adonai Eloheinu ואת אשר איננו פה עמנו היום. However, it is with the one who is with us, standing here today, before Adonai our God, as well as with the one who is not standing here today. Which means that it doesn't have to be, you didn't have to stand at this event in order to enter into the covenant. Anybody who agrees to take a hold of the covenant from that point on until ever is allowed to do so. One thing I want to point out too is it's interesting that the context is Moses speaking before the Israelites enter into Canaan. And it seems from these words that this is when they actually entered into the covenant and became the people of God, which we know that's not necessarily the case. But just from the language of it, that's the way it sounds.
Well, I think it happens a number of times.
Yeah, it happens
throughout the Torah.
At Sinai, which is where the covenant was actually given. And then at the end of the 40 years, this is just a repetition of the same covenant. And also we have to point out too that those people who were disobedient, everyone of that generation of 20 years and above had to die. So this means these are the people who remain outside of Caleb and Joshua, who were either 20 years or younger at the time.
I think you could say something along the lines of, I mean, there are multiple times where a covenant is cut. It's almost like the same covenant is, the covenant is cut a number of times, and I think that's first of all for emphasis. That God wants to Yehovah wants to make sure that this covenant is accepted. Or is understood that it's definitely, there definitely is a covenant between Yohan and Israel. But I also see it as, I don't know how to explain this in words. Let's see if I can find the right words to say this. It's kind of like if you have a wedding ceremony, that wedding ceremony may last for many, 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 many days. It doesn't all happen at once, okay? There's a ceremony, and then there's another ceremony, and there's a party, and then maybe there's an official, giving of the wedding ring, and then, I'm not talking about in today's weddings, which go by in 3 hours or whatever, but maybe in various societies in ancient times, and even today, a wedding ceremony, because it's so important and because it represents such an important thing and such a symbol of the beginning of a relationship, that it's repeated, it's extended over time. Again, I guess I'm trying to say there's like a narrative or poetic element to all of this, which is that the covenant renewing the vow, or the vow is coming in stages. I was thinking of saying taking the oaths, like renewing our oaths of marriage, but I think it's more than that. It's that the everything comes in stages, right? There's an original vow to Abraham in Genesis 15. There are vows to there's vows to Yaakov. There's vows to Israel a number of times throughout the Torah, and now this is like the final act in the play where there's one more vow right before they enter the land. So again, I see it as kind of I'm trying to find the right words. The only analogy I can think of is a wedding between two people who love each other so much that they want the wedding to go on and on and on and on. They just want to emphasize the vows again and again and again. And I guess without trying to sound corny, it doesn't sound corny, but it shows how important this vow was to God, to Yahweh, and how much he loves the people of Israel, that he constantly wants to be with them and make vows with them and cut britot, what's the word in English? Covenants with them. So that's the way I see it here.
Yeah, that's cool. There was only two places that I know of where the covenant was read before all of Israel. One was when Moses came down and wrote the Sefer Berith, and he actually gathered the tribes together and read it to them, and that was at Sinai. And then the second one is here. And just to point out, though, at Sinai, all the people who are 20 years and older at that event are now dead.
Right.
In the context we're reading now, everyone who was 20 years and older at Sinai is now dead.
Right. Except for Yeshua ben Nun and Caleb ben Yefuna, but yeah.
Everyone who was 20 years and younger is now entering into this covenant here again.
Right. Well, I don't remember all the times, but there are a number of times with the Torah where it says, "Today you have become a nation to me, and I have become your God," and so that also implies the same idea. It's kind of an ongoing theme. It's almost like God wants to, show His love for Israel by constantly cutting this making this covenant between himself. Anyway, that's my thought on the issue. What verse are we up to?
And verse 15.
15, okay.
את אשר ישבנו בארץ מצרים ואת אשר עברנו בקרב הגויים אשר עברתם. Because all the things that we have, or how we have lived in the land of Egypt, and the things that we have gone through in the midst of the nations, which you have passed through. ותראו את שפוציהם ואת גלוליהם عيد وآبن كسف وزحاف أشر إمهم. And you have seen their despicable things, or their hated things, and their Gilulehem. This is I don't know how to translate that one. That's has to do with their idols of wood and gold and stone and silver, which was with them. Penyesh Bechem Ish O Isha O Mishpacha O Shevet Asher Livavo Fonei Hayom Me'im Adonai Eloheinu Lalechet La'avod Et Elohei Hagoyim Hahem Penyesh Bechem Shoresh Porei Rosh Volana.
So we should translate that. Okay. תראו את שיקוץ הבגילם עץ ואבן, כסף וזהב אשר עמהם, פן יש לכם איש או אישה או משפחה או שבט אשר לבבו פונה היום עם יהוה אלוהינו ללכת ועוד תתראה לגויים ההם, פן יש בכם שורש פורה ראש ולענה. And Rosh Ana is the famous gall and wormwood. And
interesting, this word Latin in Arabic means a curse. When you say that, when you use the word arur in Hebrew,
well,
the Arabic is always a lan. So you say la'natullah, the curse of God.
Well, right. Species of plant, and actually that's la'ana. And they call it I'm trying to think what they call it in modern Hebrew. I think they call it shiba. And some people take a little bit of it and put it in their tea. But if you take a lot, you will strongly regret it. Or if you just bite into it, you will strongly regret it, and you'll understand firsthand what this phrase means, because it is so bitter that you will regret putting it in your mouth. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's from the mint family. I'm just going to look it up for 1 second. Wormwood. Yeah, there it is. Let me see. So its name is Artemisia absinthium. That's the scientific name for it. Wormwood, Artemisia, native to temperate regions of Eurasia and northern Africa, and widely plant, and it's used as an ingredient in spirit absinthe, as well as some alcoholic beverages. And without going too far off track, let's really see something here. Nope, with that, etymology, toxicity uses. In Middle Age, wormwood was used to spice mead. Mead is wine made out of honey. And in Morocco, it's used with tea called shiba. There it is. I guess it's for the Moroccans who took it to Israel. And they will use it. And they will use a little bit. Yep, no problem. In the 18th century England, wormwood was used sometimes instead of hops and beer. I'll try to see if I can show a picture of it. So if you ever see it growing around, you can grab some, stick it in your mouth. It's a very distinct kind of look to it. I'm showing a picture of my screen, so it may not come out so good, but there it is. That's wormwood. And so this phrase gall and wormwood, appears a number of times in the Tanakh. And let's look up Rosh. The bitter and poisonous herb. I'm looking at the BDB. Venom, always figurative. Venom of serpents. Hemlock, poison, venom. So I don't think here it's speaking about a specific. I don't think it's speaking about a specific species here. It just means some kind of, in general, some kind of bitter herb or something like that. Poisonous herb. Okay, we'll go on. Waiting for Yaakov. Verse 19. So it's speaking about a person or a family or a tribe who is basically going to be a traitor. Is going to be a traitor against the covenant. And so when this person or family or tribe hears the words of this oath, he blesses himself in his heart. Lemor, shalom yali. כי בשרירות ליבי אלך למען שפות הרבה את עצמיה. I will be blessed, basically. Allah Azot, he says, I will be blessed, saying, there will be peace upon me, because in the stubbornness of my heart, or the strength of my heart, stubbornness of my heart, elech lema'an sifot harava, I will go in stubbornness of my heart. And this has always been, this phrase, the translation of this phrase has always been a contention, but I think most translators understand this as, so in order to sweep up the satisfied with the sated with the thirsty. And I think the idea is, from what I've understood in the past, is that what the phrase is saying is that he's saying, well, even though he's like a thirsty one, he's broken the covenant, that he's going to be swept along with the tide of goodness that comes. He's going to be swept along with the rava, the satisfying tide of goodness that comes to all of Israel, because he's part of Israel. In other words, he's saying, listen, if I go do my own thing and break the covenant, I'm not going to get singled out, because I'm part of this nation, Israel. It's being blessed, and I'm just going to get carried along with their blessing. That is usually the way it's understood. I'm curious to consult some of my favorite translations. But Yaakov, anything you want to say about that verse?
Let's see. Let me go back and read it again.
This is verse 19. Oh, I think it's numbered differently here. It starts v'haya b'sham'o et davar et divrei ha'ala hazot.
Yeah.
And
it says, so, and it shall be as he hears the words of this oath, and he hits about the Devo, and he began to basically praise himself in his heart. Or you can actually even say this means he begins to curse in his heart. And we have a similar phrase in Job, where they use the word barach to mean to curse, and it talks about his children. And it says that Job went out and performed certain sacrifices in case they cursed God in their hearts. And they use a similar phrase to this, saying, "It shall be okay with me." Shalom.
I think that the barech would only mean curse when it's speaking about God. It's a euphemism for curse. Yes, the Torah does not want to say curse God.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It says that they cursed God in their heart.
Right.
And it's a similar phrase to this here.
I don't think it says anything about cursing God here. It says he basically expects blessing. He thinks he'll be blessed in his heart. I would translate that as.
Okay. It shall be well with me if I should go in the stubbornness of my heart to sweep up the well-watered with the thirsty, which is basically taking the good with the bad.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see here. Okay, so I'm looking again at Robert Alter. I turn to him a lot. He's pretty good. It will be well with me. So this is how he translates it. He's very, very good. When he hears the words of this oath and deems himself blessed in his heart, saying, "It will be well with me, though I go in my heart's obduracy, in order to sweep away the moist with the parched. The Lord shall not want to forgive him." And I just want to get his interpretation of that.
Alave is usually used of like well-watered land, pasture, well-watered, really fruitful pasturage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't specifically say what that means, but the translation here is, "It will be well with me, though I go in my heart's obduracy." in order to, and then end quote, in order to sweep away the moist with the parched, the Lord shall not want to forgive them, for then shall the Lord's wrath and his jealousy smolder against that man. Okay. In order to sweep away the moist with the parched. So, I don't know. I don't really, the only explanation I've ever heard of that is that, again, what I said earlier, I think you were way off.
Well,
that,
when you look at these people like this, we have a couple of instances in the Tanakh. First, we have the command earlier on. I can't remember exactly which parashah that was in, but we've already read it, I'm sure. And it talks about if there happens to be a report in the land that a city amongst our inheritance has turned away from the covenant and began to serve other gods, then we're to go out and we're to check it out and so forth, and remove that evil from us. Now, we also have an instance, I think it was Achan, who, when they were going through and driving out and taking over the land, the Torah says we weren't allowed to take anything from these people. We were to burn everything. And this guy took something. And as a result of his crime, his infraction, the Israelites began to lose ground. They began to be defeated in war after everything was so easily accomplished up to that point. And so Joshua prayed, hey, what's going on? And God said, hey, someone violated the covenant, so you basically all suffering for this crime. And so the idea is, in my opinion, when it talks about sweeping away the good with the bad, or the well-watered with the sated, is that even though a lot of people may not have known about the crime that this guy is doing, they would all suffer along with him, just like the Israelites when they went in. This guy, he snuck something away, and everyone paid the price for it. And it's the same way with the city that is disclosed to us that they become idol worshippers. We have to go in and remove that from amongst us so that we won't share in that infraction. We won't suffer consequences because of it. And I think that's the same idea here. The guy is saying, okay, I'll do whatever I want because it's going to go well with me either way. And because of this, the good and the bad will suffer the consequences.
It says here, I'm just reading the Everett Fox translation. I'll start in verse 17. Beware lest there be among you a man or a woman, a clan or a tribe whose heart faces away today from Yahweh our God by going to serve the gods of these of those nations. Lest there be among you a root-bearing fruit of wormwood and poison herb, for it shall be when he hears the words of this oath and blesses himself in his heart, saying, I will have shalom, though the stubbornness of my heart, though in the stubbornness of my heart I will walk, with the result of sweeping away the watered and the parched alike. End of quote. That Yahweh will not grant him pardon. But I still don't understand exactly what that means, sweeping of water. He's the parched, and the rest of Israel is the watered, and
no, it's
God
talking about the good.
Sweeping away.
It's the same thing that Abraham said. Are you going to destroy the righteous with the wicked? When talking about the destruction of Sodom, and this is the same thing. He's going to sweep away because of this guy doing his crap, or whether it's the tribe or the family or the person or the city. Like I said, we already have it established about the city that does this. We have to remove this from Israel so that we all don't share in it. And that's what it's talking about. It's going to sweep away the good with the bad. The Ralbe is always talking about well-watered, good, fruitful pasture land. And that's what it's talking about. So it's good land versus what's parched and not good. It's the good with the bad.
Yeah, but I'm not getting what he says. So he's saying this, right?
No, he's not saying this.
Well,
this is the result. The Lima'an is the result. He's saying the end of his statement is even though I go in the stubbornness of my heart. That's the end of his statement. The Lima'an is the result of his saying this.
Right, maybe. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's just always a phrase that I've never really understood. So, all right, I'm not gonna get bogged down in it right here. But I've heard a number of different explanations, and it still doesn't click with me. But all right, anyway, verse 20. Lo yaveh Yehovah solech lo. Okay, I'll read it. This. Lo yaveh Yehovah solech yoveh Yehovah sloach lo. Ki az yishan af Yehovah. וקינתו באיש ההוא ורבצה בו כל העלה כתובה בספר הזה מחה יהוה אל את שמו מתחת השמיים. So God will not want to forgive him, but instead, I'll translate this that, ki az, but rather God will become furious and as Yashin af Yehovah v'kinat, God's wrath and fury shall burn upon this man. V'ravtzabo kol ha'alah ha'ktuba b'sefer hazeh, and all of this oath shall wait or shall come down upon him. Shall fall down upon him.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, fall down upon him, come down upon him. So be brought down on him, on his head. Kind of,
against him.
Yeah, right. The Sefer Hazeh, in the all of the oath that's written in this book, Macha Yoah et Shemo mitachat hashamayim, and Yoah will erase his name from under the heavens. Mm-hmm. Verse 21, Yoah will separate him out for evil from among all the tribes of Israel. According to all of the curses, and in this case, alot clearly means curses, and it may be a play on words using Allah, which meant the covenant, but oath and curse are pretty closely related, as you mentioned before, Yaakov. That it's the implication is an oath that has curses if the oath is broken. Yep. So,
we'll see that later because it tells you specifically that's what it's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, verse 22. V'amar hador ha'acharon b'nechem asher yakumu me'acharehem v'hanochri asher yavo me'eretz rchoka v'ra'u et makot ha'aretz ha'hi v'et tahlu'eha asher hila Yehovah ba. And the later generations, the future generations, your sons who will arise after you, and the foreigner who will come from a faraway land and see the destruction, Makota Aratzahi, the destruction, the severe blows of that land with Tachlueha, and it's usually, I think it's related to the word Choleh, like it's disease, sickness. Asher Hila Yoaba. The sickness with which Yehovah made it sick. Gofrit. So now it's talking about, okay, so okay, so now it's talking about if Israel breaks the covenant. So now we're done with this idea of this one person. Now we're back to all of Israel breaking the covenant, and if that happens, then future generations are going to be shocked by how desolate and destroyed the land looks. Verse 23, Gofrit wa melach srefa kol artsa lo tizra velot tatzmiach velo yale ba kol esef kema'apechet stom va'amora. Okay, so let's go back. Gofrit and melach. Gofrit is how do you call it again? Brimstone, right? There you go. Brimstone and salt and burning salt. Srefa kol or in salt. Sarefah kol atza, the land completely burned. Lo tizra velo tetzmiach, you shall not plant seed, and you shall not and you shall not grow anything. Velo ya'aleh ba kol esev, and no, not even any grass shall grow up upon it. Kema'apechet Sodom ba'amara, and it shall be like the overturning of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah.
Adma.
Yeah, the tizara and tatzmiach, this is the feminine. That's for the Eretz. The Eretz won't bring forth, and it won't have anything to
Right.
sprout.
Correct. Yeah, I read it wrong. You're right. That's right. Atza lo tizara velo tatzmiach. That's correct. Yes. Velo ya'aleh ba kol esev kema'apechet Sodom ba'amara. Adma and tzvoim. So I guess these were cities that were, are those the cities also that were mentioned as destroyed together with Sodom and Amorah? I don't remember now,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Sherafach Yoah be'apo be'hamato. Cities of plain. Yep. Sherafach Yoah be'apo be'hamato, which Yoah overturned in his fiery anger and his fury. Apo means literally in his nose, but the implication is his, like fire coming out, like flames coming out of his nostrils. So I translated as his fiery anger, bahamato, and his literally his heat, but again it means his fury.
Yeah.
Verse 24, Amru kol hagoyim al ma asa Yehoah kacha la'aretz hazot, ma harriya afa gadol hazeh. And all of the nations will say, why? For what reason did Yehovah do such a thing to this land? What is the reason, or what is behind? Is that what is behind this great burning fury? Verse 25. Amru al asher azvu et brit Yehovah, and they shall say. And they shall answer, I guess, it is because they left the covenant of Yehovah, Elohei Avotam, the Lord of their fathers, the God of their fathers, Asher Karat Imam, which he made with them, Behotzio Otam Eretz Mitzrayim, when he took upon taking them out of the land of Egypt. Verse 26. Yelchu v'yavdu Elohim acharim, and they went and they worshipped other gods, v'ishtahavu lahem, and they prostrated themselves before them. V'ishtachavu lahem Elohim, and they prostrated before them. Elohim asher lo yad'um velo halak lahem, gods whom they did not know, and which he had not given, he had not distributed, given to them. Portioned out. Perfect. Exactly.
The interesting phrase, because we see that earlier on. When it talks about the worship of the heavenly bodies, and it actually uses, I think, the similar phrase, if I'm not mistaken, that it was given to the nations, but it wasn't given to us, or it was given to all the nations to serve. Here it mentions that Adonai was specifically portion, and we also see that his nahala, his hilcha, his chelik, or however you want to say it, is actually Israel. It's interesting too how it says that. Man, what you reading there? I see what you got there.
What's that? Oh, this is my computer screen.
You've got your camera on the other side, so I can see your computer there.
Yeah. Oops. Okay. Verse 27. Yihar af Yehovah ba'aretz hahi, and God's fury, God will be furious, or God's fury will burn upon that land. Lavi aleha et kol haklala ktuva b'sefer hazeh, and in order to bring upon it all of the curse which is written in this book. ויצם יהוה מעל אדמתם, ויצם יהוה מעל אדמתם בארץ בחמה. So I guess it's related to the word Shama, shall make them desolate.
Right. Natesh. Natesh means to uproot.
Okay, got it. Yeah, got it. No nitush. Yep, got it.
So,
yep, and you'll uproot them me'al admatam.
And he'll uproot them.
Right. Yehovah me'al admatam be'ach b'chaima, with fury and with fiery anger, b'ketzef, and with foaming anger, great foaming anger, v'yashtitim el eretz acheret kayom hazeh, and he shall send them out or cast them out to another land, kayom hazeh. I guess we can interpret that as they are today. Maybe it's referring to the fact that it isn't. Yeah.
But the point.
How would you translate that?
This is something I like to point out, because this is one of the verses that the documentary hypothesis always point out. Oh, this was written later when they were in exile some other time.
Right. Kayom hazeh. Yeah.
But we have to remember the context, and this is why I always keep bringing this point up, that the context that we're reading right now, this happened in the period of one day. Moses is standing before the people as they're in Moab. Okay?
Right, exactly.
They're in another land.
Right, exactly.
They're coming out of, they're still in another land. And why are they in the other land? Because they didn't obey God. God said, go up and take the land. They said, no, they're giants. We look like grasshoppers. We can't do it. And so they spent 40 years exiled. And that's what Moses is getting at. As you are this day, out, you were sent away. You're cast away for 40 years. So the documentary hypothesis is all quatch. It's all nonsense, basing it on verses like this, because they ignore context.
Right, absolutely. I just want to get this was 28, second here. And fire and filling the other end as on this day. I think sin is revealed. That's a good fear. Shake. Causing a great fear and flung them. 1 second here. Let me just look at something. Okay, and into another land as on this day. And again, this is what Robert Alter says here. I like his stuff. The temporal indicator here, of course, reflects the perspective of those who behold the devastation of Israel, and is not strictly necessary to infer, as some critical scholars have done, that both the phrase and the whole evocation of exile reflect the fact that this textual unit was composed after 586 BCE. The entire book of Deuteronomy was written in a period of ominous threats to national existence after the destruction of the northern kingdom of Israel in 722 BCE, and it took little effort of imagination to conjure up. Oh, well, he's not religious, I guess. The prospect of calamitous destruction.
This is this idea, this documentary hypothesis. They say that Deuteronomy and Joshua were written after the destruction of northern Israel. And I say that's nonsense.
No,
they
of course
base
it's nonsense.
solely on these instances where it says Kayom Hazeh. And I say they ignore the entire context of what the book was even talking about. The context.
Well, I think what he's saying here, I think ironically what he's saying here is, he says, as some critical scholars have done, that both the phrase, saying that some critical scholars said the entire book of Deuteronomy, or that this textual unit was composed after 586 BCE, meaning after the destruction of the first temple. No, but he's saying, oh no, it wasn't destroyed. It wasn't written after 586 BCE, but it was actually written after the destruction of the northern kingdom after 722 BC. So he really exchanges one pile of mud for another pile of mud, or something like that. But I just want to read it one more time. So any other thoughts about it? יתשב יהוה מעל אדמתם באף בהמה בקצף הגדול וישלחים אל ארץ אחרת כיום הזה. כיום הזה. Okay, I don't know. It's also one that's never really I guess that is the best explanation. That speaking about we're in Moab right now, and as we are today in different land. Yeah, I guess.
Why are they there? That's the question. Why are they there? They're there because they disobeyed God to begin with. He sent out the spies and said, let's go get it. And they said, hell no. There's giant people there. We ain't going there. And that's why the entire generation died. That's why they, that was the final straw. He says, okay, this entire group is going to die here in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And so this is the context.
So it's as good an explanation as any. Yeah. The great anger uprooted the people from their land and banished them to another land where they still live today. It's different translations. More. 29, as they are this day. Yeah, I guess it's really is the best explanation. Alrighty, fair enough.
Now these are this part here, what you're about to read. This is going to go well when we get down to the 6th Aliyah. So I just want to point out, keep this next verse in mind. And when we get to the 6th Aliyah, we're going to go back and references.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, Yaakov, take it away.
لأدوناي إلهينا وهنجلوف لانو ولبنينو عاد أولام لعصوف et kul divrei haTorah hazov. And that's the end of the 3rd Aliyah. And it says, the hidden is for Adonai our God, and the revealed is for us and our children forever.
Right.
To do all the words of this Torah. Now, I just want you to understand that this is where you get the idea of this gematria garbage and all these magical theories.
Right. Well, you've got the dots over the lanu levanenu.
The masters use that only as emphasis. Anytime they want to emphasize a word, they put those dots above it. This is not the only place. And so you have lanu emphasizing for us and for our children. What is it? The thing that has been revealed, what was revealed, we are told in the Song of Moses about the will of God, the doctrine of God being given to us. And this is it. This is, and it will actually be explained when we get to the 6th Aliyah. But this is a verse that a lot of Kabbalists use to say that, well, you have to have someone extrapolate the mysterious meaning of the Torah. And this is nonsense. The entire thing is that something has been revealed that we can do the words of the Torah. And by their reasoning is you can't do the words of the Torah unless we give you some oral nonsense that we revised out of the cracks of our butts for you to do it. And that's the only point I wanted to bring out. When we get to the 6th Aliyah, this verse will be made very clear.
Right.
So,
I already know what you're talking about, but I won't ruin the surprise.
Chapter 30, verse 1. وَهَيَا خِيَبُهُ عَلَيْهَ كُلْ الدَّبَرِيمْ هَإِلَيْ حَبَّرَخَ وَهَبْكِلَا أَشَرْ نَفَتِّي لِفَنَيْخَ وَهَشِبُوفَا إِلْ لِبَوَيْخَ بِكُلْ هَغُويِيم أَشَرْ هِدِّيهَخَ أَدُونَي إِلَهِيخَ شَمَّ. And it shall be when or as all the words, all these things or all these words come against you, the blessings and the curses, which I have set before you. Then you shall bring it back or return it to your heart amongst all the nations where Adonai your God has driven you there. وشفت عد أدوني إلهيך وشمعت بقولו كכל אשר אנוכי מסווך היום אתה ובניך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך. And you shall return to Adonai your God, and you shall listen to his voice, according to all that I'm commanding you today, you and your sons, and with all of your heart and with all of your self, or your soul, however you want to call it. ושב אדוני אלוהיך את שבתך ורחמך ושב קיבצך בכל העמים אשר הפיצך אדוני אלוהיך שמה. Then Adonai your God shall return your captivity and have mercy upon you. And he will return and gather you from all the nations or all the peoples where Adonai your God has spread you, chafetz, driven you, or I think chafetz means put, means to be spread out.
Let me look at it here. Which verse are we in again?
We're in verse 3.
He feeds. La feeds is to spread apart.
Yeah, which where the Lord Adonai your God has spread you there. We see that in the covenant made to Yaakov, where he says, at Bethel, he will spread you out to the north, the south, the east, or actually it starts out to the east, or the west. I think it's the west. The west, to the east, the north, and south. Anyway, it just means to be spread out. Im Yehyeh Nidahcha בקצה השמיים, משם יקבצך אדוני אלוהיך, ומשם יקרחך. And if you're being driven away, wherever you're driven to.
Excuse me, I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay. Happens to be in the extremities of the heavens. From there, Adonai your God shall gather you, and from there he will take you. وهذيئך أدوني إلهيך إلى الأرض أشر يشيروا أبوتيך ورشتا وهيتيبך وهربך مأبوتيך. And Adonai your God shall bring you to the land which your fathers Yerishu, which means they Yerash has to do with an inheritance, but it also means to dispossess. So it means your fathers went in to possess it by dispossessing other people. And you shall possess it. And he will bring good upon you and increase you more than your fathers. Umal Adonai Elohecha et levavecha ואת לבב זרעך לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך למען חייך. And Adonai your God shall circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, literally your seed, to love Adonai your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul or your being, in order that, or because of your life, literally, or so that you may live. ונתן אדוני אלוהיך את כל העלות האלה על אויביך ועל שונאיך אשר רדפוך. And Adonai your God shall set all of these curses upon your enemies and upon those who hate you and who pursue you. وأتى تشوف وشمعت بقول أدوناي وعصيت את כל מצוותיו Asher Anochi Mesawcha Hayom. And you shall return and obey the voice of Adonai, and you shall do all of his commandments, which I am commanding you today. והותירך אדוני אלוהיך בכל מעשה ידיך, בפרי בטנך ובפרי בהמתך ובפרי אדמתך לטובה. And so Adonai your God shall to increase all the works of your hands, the fruit of your belly, becoming the offspring, and the offspring of your animals, and the fruits of your ground for good. Ki yeshuv Adonai lasus alecha letov, ka'asher sas al avotecha. And so Adonai shall return to the good pleasure upon you, as he was pleased with your parents or your fathers. That's where you get the word sason. Ki tishma b'kol Adonai Elohecha, because you obeyed or you listened to the voice of Adonai your God. Lishmor mitzvotav v'hukatav hakatava b'sefer haTorah hazeh. Ki teshuv il Adonai Elohecha b'kol levavecha u'b'kol nafshecha. You shall obey or listen to the voice of Adonai your God to keep his commandments and his ordinances, which are written in this book of the Torah. Then Adonai your God will return. So you will return to Adonai your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul. And now we come to the sixth aliyah, which actually is going to explain what he's talking about in the third aliyah. Hanistarof la'Adonai Eloheinu v'hanigloth lanu u'levonenu ad olam. Okay, so this is ki hamitzvah hazot asher enochi mitzawecha hayom lo nifleith hi mimmecha v'lo rachocha hi. For this commandment which I'm commanding you today it is not too great for you, or is not too wonderful from you, and is not far or wide away, which means far away. Lo v'shamayim hi, it is not in the heavens. Lemor mi ya'alelanu hashemema v'yibkaheha lanu. That it should be said, who shall ascend to the heavens and take it for us, or and take it for us. وَيَشْمِعِينُ أَوْثَا, that we will listen to it, وَنَعْثِينَ, and perform it. وَلَوْ مَعِيبَرَ الْأَيَامِ هِي, and it is not on the other side of the sea, لَمُور, that it should be said, مِي يَعْوَرْ لَانُ إِلَى عِيبَرْ حَيَامِ وَيُكَحِيهَ لَانُ, who shall cross the seas and take it for us, that we will listen to it or obey it, and perform it. Ki qarov aleicha haddavar me'od, baficha u'vilevavecha la'asoto. For it is very near to you. This thing is, or this word is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that shall be performed, to do it. So the thing that was revealed is the Torah itself. We've got the will of God written form is here, and it's not so complicated. Somebody's here, I'm sorry. I was reading inside of the scene. It's not so complicated that it will be like you have to send someone personally to the heavens to find out what it means, or somewhere else, you can't understand it, because we're told that we're to speak about the Torah, and when it says in chapter 6, I think it is, it says, وَشِنَتَّمْ لِبَنَيْكَ, or وَشِنَتَّمْ لِبَنَيْكَ, you shall practically apply them before your children. And this word shanan is usually translated as teach, and of course it uses the word limov later in the same context. So it's talking about teaching, but the shanan means to practically apply. And it's interesting because in Arabic we have the word sunnah amongst the Muslims. In Islamic law, you have what's called Quran wa Sunnah. The Quran, which is the text, and the Sunnah, which is the example that was provided of how to keep the Torah. And this is the same word, this is the same idea. We're not only supposed to speak about them, but we're supposed to practically apply them for our children so that they'll learn how to do it. So the point is that it's not so super complicated. And this is where the word nifleith comes from. Of course, we have in the Torah, it says if there's anything that comes up that's too great, it's too complicated for us to decide in our local magistrates, then we're to take that to a certain place. This is the same idea here. And so he's telling you the Torah is not so super complicated that you can't do it. And so you don't need anybody to reveal the mystery. And I was speaking earlier about, I was speaking to my wife about it, this idea of meat and milk. I remember, if I remember correctly, I heard a Samaritan who was explaining how they come up with this idea of meat and milk, because, strangely enough, now the Samaritans and the Jews have been separated a long time, even before the oral Torah even popped up amongst the Jews. But they keep the same rule about not eating meat and milk together. And I remember hearing a commentary where they were talking about the reason why they do that was because they looked at the letters and figured out they added up the numbers that the letters in this commandment equal to, and equal to exactly what the different species of animals were or whatever. And I find this to be just nonsense. It's funny, even Samaritans get into gematria, and I didn't know that until I actually heard this explanation.
I'm surprised too.
Of the separation of meat and milk. And the only way they can come up with that is to invent some idea of gematria, where they have to add up the numbers of the letters and then figure out, okay, well, how do I apply that? And it's all just a bunch of nonsense. And here we have it. It's not super complicated. We don't need someone to go into the heavens and speak with God and bring down a revelation. It's here. It was put on 2 tablets of stone and give it to us.
And to add to that, we're supposed to have wise and God-fearing judges. So if we do have difficult situations that come up, we're supposed to have judges that are able to deal with these situations. And when you look at how straightforward the Torah is, and how the judges are supposed to be judging on a very straightforward basis, taking into effect, using logic and common sense, and taking into account all the facts of the case, and taking into account obviously the laws of the Torah, and then you compare it to the complicated thing that the rabbis have done with the Torah, where they've completely changed it into I don't even know what it is. It's a completely different religion that doesn't make sense. You have to be like some kind of indoctrinated into the cult to understand what to understand, and then once you're indoctrinated into the cult, you become violent towards, potentially violent towards anyone who's not, indoctrinated into the same culture. Seriously, because you can't back up what you have to say with logic, so you become, agitated and potentially violent. So I mean, this whole idea of
that all the time online. When we have.
Oh yeah.
It was just a few weeks ago. I was in a discussion with a Orthodox convert.
Right.
He just flipped out on me because I wouldn't grant him. I basically held him to the standard. If he wants to say the rabbis have it right, then the rabbis have to have it based upon this somehow.
Right.
I'm not going to accept anything your rabbis say. If you're going to prove a point, prove it from the text. Let the text define what it means.
Right. And they can't.
That sets them off. They just go crazy. They just go nuts.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right. What verse are we up to?
We are at the beginning of the 7th Aliyah. So that will be 15, verse 15. In mine is verse 15. Now these numbers, I don't know why the numbers are always so different in different texts.
I don't either.
this I'm using the Chamisha Chumash Torah from the who is this? The Koran public pictures.
Right.
And I like it only because of the way it's set up. They got everything set up for you. But the way they have it numbered, man, is sometimes confusing. Anyway, so according to this is verse 15. 30:15. ראה נתתי לפניך היום את החיים ואת הטוב ואת המוות ואת הרע. So look, I've set before you today life and good and death and bad.
Which, if I point out, I mean, it's an obvious point here, but life is associated with goodness, with good things. Death is associated with bad things, right? It seems like an obvious point, but you have some, religions where, life is considered the curse and death is good and life is bad. I don't know, maybe Hinduism comes to mind, where, life is just a punishment that you have to kind of suffer through, and when you die you're liberated from this punishment.
I've heard that from Christians a lot too.
Christians
and
too,
they get this crazy idea by thinking that life was cursed because of what Adam and Hava did, but that's not true. Not at all. The only curse that was given was to the ground. I mean, the ground itself was cursed first for Adam and Hava to give thorns and weeds or whatever, and then it was cursed again the second time by pain, and it says it'll no longer give it strength. So at no time was humanity technically cursed by God at the beginning. So how can you have some idea? I never understood that. How do you have this idea of an inherited curse because of what they did? That violates anything that the Torah even explains later. But you're right.
I mean, you can take it even further, and where I think it's the Gnostics that they believe that because God is, or because the physical world is evil, it's full of evil and hardship and suffering. So the creator of the physical God, of the physical world, our God is basically the devil. He's basically the Antichrist.
That's where they did this demi-earth or whatever. This demi-earth.
Yeah, and so they believe, the Gnostics believe that our God, I wouldn't even say the name in this context. It says Job would not use the word curse in context with the name of God. So, but they believe that our God is basically the devil. He's basically the evil creator, because he created this evil world. And they've I think there's been a lot of anti-Semitism coming out of that idea. I know the Nazis also adhere to it. Some of them. Anywho, all right, verse 16. I'm sorry, go ahead. Nice. DVD, thank you for joining us. Welcome anytime. Okay,
Oh, he's blessed?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
שאנוכי מצווכם.
אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, ללכת בדרכיו ולשמור מצוותיו וחוקותיו ומשפטיו, וחיית ורבית, וברכך אדוני אלוהיך בארץ אשר אתה שמה לרשתה. That I am commanding you today to love Adonai your God, to follow in his paths, and to keep his commandments, his statutes, and his judgments. And you shall and multiply, and Adonai your God shall bless you in the land where you are going there to possess. وإن يفني لبابها والله تسمع وندحت وهشتحويت لإلهيم آخرين وعبدتم. And if your heart shall turn and won't obey, and you are driven and you serve, or you're driven away, and you serve other gods, or you worship other gods.
You shall be driven away, or you shall be driven away, and you shall serve other gods and worship them, or you shall bow before other gods and worship them, or and serve them. Yeah.
Higavti lechem hayom. I will declare to you today, ki avov tovedun, that you shall certainly perish. Lo farichun yamim al ha'adamah, your days shall not be lengthened upon the land. Asher atta over et hayardain lavo sham larishta, which you, on the land which you are crossing the Jordan to go there to possess. Ha'idothi v'chem hayom et hashemayim et ha'aretz ha'chayim v'hamave nathati lefanecha ha'beracha v'ha'kilala uv'charta b'chayim lima'an tichiyeh ata v'zara'echa.
Let's say let's just talk. Let's talk about the word ha'idoti.
Yeah, I'll bring to witness, or God calls to witness.
Ha'id. So okay, so let's analyze this grammatically for a second.
Form of ada, which means to bring to witness.
Right. So, but one second here. Ha'idoti b'chem hayom et hashamayim. Ha'idoti. It should be aida, or adati, I guess. Wait, ha'id. So okay, so I guess it's just, I guess the vowels are a little bit wrong, right? Because in modern Hebrew you would say ani ma'id adati, ani adati, but here it's ha'idoti. So what's with the vowels there?
Ha'idoti is the hifil perfect. I bring as witness against you today the heavens and the earth. Life and death have I set before you. The blessing.
Yes, but my point is that the word ha'idoti, I don't think that's the standard form. It should be ha'adati. Now I forgot myself. Ani ha'adati. In modern Hebrew, at least it would be ha'adati. So why is it ha'idoti? That's a strange form.
I don't know. I don't see really anything strange about the form.
Well, what would be for the hifil form, for the first person past singular past tense of the hifil of hifil, it would be. Let me just remember hifil. Okay.
It's just saying I have brought as a witness against you today the heavens and the earth.
Yes, but it's not a standard form. So if I wanted to say I am just using like ani maf'il, ani hif'alti. So it would be hif'alti ha'id doti. Okay, because it's similar. Hifamti, ani ha'id, ti, adati. I think it should be. I think technically the verb charts would say ha'adati, not ha'idoti. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a strange form. But I have to check. So just use it from modern Hebrew. Maybe with starting with an ayin, or maybe it's a two-letter word, a two-letter root, or it's a three-letter root, ayin, yud, dalid. Yes, it is. Yeah, modern Hebrew would be ha'adati.
It's ha'idisi here. Oh, that's a wrong word. Back here. So we have ha'adti.
Yeah, ha'adati, right?
Bring to produce or call a witness.
Right. So why the ha'idoti? It's a strange form.
Good question. I don't know. I have to think about it.
All right, whatever. Okay, it's the artist, and the crown thingy above the tzadi in haaretz. What is that thing? That also, verse 19. Ha'idoti b'chem hayom et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, and above it there's like three dots.
Yeah, that's the Segolta. The Segolta is what's considered the Segolta normally comes after the word, and it's what's called post-positive. The Yativ, for instance, is pre-positive, means it comes before the word. So anytime you have a word like where you have like the pashta, it's also the same way. It's post-positive. The pashta always comes at the end of the word. But when the accent doesn't fall on the last syllable of the word, then you have two of the same accent on the same word. So that's why you have the Segolta on the Aleph and on the Sada. It actually goes after the word. It should be after the Sada and not over the Sada. But it's over the Aleph because that's where the accent is. So anytime you see the accent, you only see this in a few. Like mainly it's the Segolta and the Pashta. You'll see two Pashtas, or you'll see two Segoltas, and that's only when the accent is on. Mostly the accent comes at the last syllable, but in Segolits like Eretz, it comes on the syllable before the last, not necessarily the first syllable, but the syllable before the last. So we have with ha'aretz, the accent is on the aleph, and so that's why you have two. You should have two in your text. I don't know if you do or not.
No, I don't. I don't have one.
Yeah,
over
but you should have two. You should have a Segolta over the aleph and one over the Sadi. But if you don't, it doesn't matter. The point is that the Segolta normally stands after the word, just like the Pashta always stands after the word.
All right. Lema'an tichia ata zarecha. Okay. Verse 20. לאהבה את
אדוני אלוהיך, לשמוע בקולו, ולדוב קבו. This is an interesting word here. We've talked about this before. כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך לשבת על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב לשאת להם. To love Adonai your God, to obey his voice. Now it says, and to cling to him. Okay? This is the first time we understand this word is in the story of the creation of the female. And Adam exclaims, he says, for this reason, the man shall forsake his mother and father, and udavach ishto, and cling or stick to his wife. And so I've always pointed out, whenever you see these phrases, if you are told you have to honor your mother and father, and Adam says you can forsake your mother and father and stick to your wife, how much more should you forsake everything and stick only to God Himself? Keep His commandments no matter what. And so that's what I always pointed out. For He is your life, and He's the one who extends your days to dwell upon the land which Adonai swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them. And that is the end of Nitzavim. And that's wonderful, because we've actually got 20 minutes left over, and we finished the entire Parashah.
Which is the first time we've ever finished the entire Parashah, ever.
Yep. Well, yeah, that we can do next week, because from what I understand, there's actually no Parashah for next week that I've seen in my schedule. And usually, depending on the year, when you have leap years, whatever,
Right.
the weeks change. And so you have, on years that there's no leap year, then you have Nitzavim and Vayelech read together.
Right.
So the Aliyah would actually be a lot longer. But I think this is a leap year. We had to have a 13th month or something. Or last year was a leap year. So I think we don't read these two together this year, which is why it's not on the schedule for next week.
So what is on schedule for next week?
Vayelech is what I'll read next week.
Vayelech, we're up to Vayelech. Okay.
Sometimes these are read together. Sometimes you have Nitzavim Vayelech read together.
Just 1 second here. Torah readings. Oh, this is going all the way back. Okay. Let's see here.
And next, the Ha'azinu. That's not next week. That's the week after.
Wait a second. So next week is what?
Could be Vayelech.
Okay. Alrighty. Yeah, Vayelech. Okie dokie.
What do they have? What do you have listed for next week? Because I'm looking at my schedule. I don't even have one. They don't have one there.
That's what I'm trying to find out here. Hold on 1 second. Torah readings, Shabbat calendar, 2019-2020. It really all ends because it's 2020-2021. Well, I guess.
See, I have Ha'azinu starting on Saturday the 26th in my schedule, which means Vayelech should be next Shabbat, because there's nothing listed for next Shabbat.
1 second. So look at the Asia Torah calendar here. Right, so this week is listed, today's 12th Parashat Nitzavim Vayelech. And then, they don't list anything, and then it goes straight to Ha'azinu.
Right. And the only reason they do that is because some years you have shorter, you have less.
Because it's Rosh Hashanah for them. Because it's Rosh Hashanah. No, the reason is because it's Rosh Hashanah. It's Rosh Hashanah next week.
Could be.
That's the reason.
It's not Rosh Hashanah.
So I guess they don't list it as I guess they don't have it. Right.
But they probably have a whole different.
So what we could do is.
I'll do Vayelech next Shabbat. And that's also a short one. that's actually shorter than what we read today.
Mm-hmm.
So we should be able to finish Wayelek next Shabbat and talk about why it's not Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, I guess so. Let's wait 1 second here. So wait a second. So so this week was Nitzavim Vayelech, and then 2 weeks is listed Ha'azinu. So you're saying that between Vayelech and Ha'azinu, we have what again?
No, this week is Nitzavim. Next week is Wayelech, and then the following would be Ha'azinu.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see. Okay, fine. Got it. All right, sounds good.
We have 4 weeks extra on leap years.
Right.
Which is why you have, in shorter years, you have those parashahs doubled where you're reading 2 at one time, because you have 4 weeks fewer on those years that are not leap years, or you don't add the extra month.
Well, here they list, again, here on the Eish calendar, they list Nitzavim Vayelech for today. No Torah portion next week because it's Rosh Hashanah for them. And then Ha'azinu in 2 weeks on the 26th.
Yeah, so I'll just read Wayelech next week.
All right. You mean, okay, Vayelech. Okay, that's perfect. That works. So next week we'll talk about. So next week we'll talk about Vayelech, and we'll talk about Yom Teruah. Yom Teruah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, Yaakov. I think I'm going to end it here. So I want to go get some rest. I'm kind of tired today, so I think we'll call it quits here. Yeah.
Well, it was really cool to get through it. This was a pretty straightforward parasha. It was really interesting. And as parashas go, this is one of my favorite because this is a blatant contradiction to basic rabbinic interpretation. And I love it. But anyway,
you're talking about specifically with which phrase? With the phrase "Lo b'shamayim hi"?
Yeah, well, that in conjunction with the hidden things belong to God, and what's revealed belongs to us and our children forever, that we may do the Torah. And it doesn't have anything to do with having rabbinic interpretation, because it tells you that the Torah is not so complicated that you have to send someone to heaven to get it. It's in our mouths and in our hearts, because we have to talk about it daily. We have to talk about it when we wake up. We have to talk about it when we go to sleep. Before we go to sleep, we have to talk about it when we're sitting in our homes, when we're walking around on the way. And we have to practically apply these things before our children, or to our children, so that they can learn too. So as long as we do that, we'll understand the Torah. We'll be able to call to mind the different things that, and even if there happens to be something super complicated, that's when you confer with other Hachamim, and whenever we have an actual Torah state, if the Hachamim can't answer it, then we go to the judges and the Kohanim, and they, in council, will consider it and issue a edict or whatever.
Sounds good.
But I appreciate it, man. It's always good to have these. I love these.
Definitely.
I hope they catch on.
Hopefully. Given time, they will, I'm sure. You just have to be consistent and persistent.
Even if it's just me and you, man, I don't care.
Fine with me. It's fine with me. It works for me. I don't care. And if anyone wants to see it afterwards, they can always watch it on YouTube. So it's fine.
So we'll get it downloaded and uploaded, and I'll send you the link and everything later.
Sounds good. All right, Yaakov. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov. If I don't get to talk to you later.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye.